Hello, everyone. It's a new week, and we are back on Betting Weekly WTA. I'm Nigel Seeley. I'm joined by our WTA handicapper. It's Rory Jiwani. Rory, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Nigel. How are you doing?
Well, it's back to earth with a bump, isn't it? I mean, we've just had 2 weeks of absolutely unbelievable tennis in Melbourne on the men's and the women's draw. Now we're back to the delights of the Thailand Open on the WTA 250 event and the 500 event in Linz in Austria, where the draw hasn't even just been announced and they're still qualifying. So we're back to normal, aren't we now? Look, but before
We
we
are.
move on to this week's, it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't matter where it is if we can find winners. It doesn't really care where
Yep.
tournament it is. But before we move on to this week's events, we've got to talk about the Australian Open last week, this weekend. Sabalenka won her back-to-back, her second Australian Open, with an absolutely unbelievable display of power. 14 sets she won without dropping a set. Is it something that we may have to rebase the women's game now? Igor Swiatek obviously disappointed. And, do we look at it now and think, Sabalenka is the girl to beat for the remainder of the year? Or do you think there's still life in Swiatek for the remainder of the year?
I think we'll have to wait and see. I mean, we didn't want Sabalenka after the way she fell to Rybakina in the Brisbane final, but there was no hangover from that at all. Very, very impressive. There were moments against Coco Gauff. I mean, that first hit at Coco Gauff, Gauff served some double faults at some really bad times, and that handed the initiative to Sabalenka. Never in any trouble in the final against Qin Wensheng. But that top half just fell apart, didn't it? We had Rybakina going out to Anna Blinkova in that epic tiebreak, and then Swiatek stunned by Linda Noskova, who we've seen is a real talent. She reached the Adelaide final, Adelaide 1 final last year, losing to Sabalenka, then didn't qualify for the Australian Open. Lost away a bit last season, but started this season obviously very strong. But I suppose the surprise of the tournament was Diana Yastremska, who reached the semi-finals out of nowhere. I mean, she's very talented. I think 21 was her previous best world ranking. I remember last year, funny enough, one of the tournaments we're going to be looking at today, the Thailand Open, I saw her lose to Tatiana Maria, 6-love, 6-4, and she just spat the dummy in that one. I mean, Hua Hin, the Thailand Open, is the slowest court of the year, slowest conditions of the year, and Yastremska just didn't have a clue. And I'd written her off as a very flaky player, one player not to back, but she kept confounding the odds in Melbourne. She played superbly well, serving very well, but then fell in the semi-finals. But a great run from her, which came out of nowhere.
If we look at the BetRivers updated odds to win the next set of majors, the French Open, the Igor Swiatek is -106. No surprise on the clay. You would expect her to get the better of Sabalenka, who's +550. That would be the Belarusian's worst major, you would have thought. Coco Gauff is still 9-1. I think that's a big price. That I think 9-1 Gauff at the French Open is big. I mentioned last time we spoke, but I think that's I'd have her ahead of Sabalenka personally, but that's my opinion
Yep.
there. But then we move on to the US Open, where you've got if you look at the outright market, we have Sabalenka as the favourite, joint favourite now with Swiatek at +335. Coco Gauff is +450. She's the defending champion there. And then we look at Wimbledon, and Sabalenka is the clear favourite at Wimbledon. So she's vying for favouritism in one of the remaining Grand Slams. She's favourite for Wimbledon, and you wouldn't expect her to be favourite at the US Open, the French Open. So it's she's making a case now as the woman to beat on the women's game, isn't she?
She is, as you say, she won the Australian Open without losing a set. That's incredibly impressive. A lot to happen before even the next major. We've got those tournaments in the Middle East, and then you've got the American Swing, Indian Wells, followed by Miami, and then we're building up to the French Open. So a long way to go. It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens in these Middle East tournaments. There is a variety of court speeds. I mean, I did comment that Australian Open wasn't the quickest. It's still probably quicker than some of the tournaments in the Middle East. But obviously Swiatek played very well there. Then she got the first of her injuries last season. Barbara Krejcikova won one of those big Middle Eastern tournaments last year. I think it was Dubai was the one she won, and she beat Sabalenka and Swiatek in the process. So still a lot can happen. You've got players like Mira Andreeva who show that she's definitely a force to be reckoned with. Noskova obviously beating Swiatek. Rybakina, I wouldn't write her off, certainly not with that serve. I still think those four, the big four, Sabalenka, Swiatek, Rybakina, and Goff, are a bit clear of the rest. I still think that. We'll see if that plays out in the next few tournaments. But there are a couple of players who have staked their case to be trying to bridge that gap and make it more than four at the top of the game.
All that is to come over the next few months here on WTA show on Betting Weekly. Lots and lots of content coming on the WTA. And this week we're going to start with probably not the best of the events that we're going to talk about throughout the year. But it's an interesting one nevertheless. And you actually said there at the beginning of when you spoke, you said that Hua Hin, where the venue is for the Thailand Open, it's a WTA 250 event. It's the slowest conditions of the year, and that is very, very important when you're looking at for a winner here, and also when you're looking at some matches as well. So give us a little bit of rundown of the conditions and what stats you have for the conditions, what the players are going to find themselves in this week over in Thailand.
Well, yeah, as I said, it's slow. Last year was statistically the slowest tournament in terms of court speed, slower than anything on clay. Incredibly, conditions will be hot. They'll be in sort of 80 degrees, high 80s, 30 degrees Celsius. It's warm. It's just these courts are really, really slow. Last year, service hold percentage was 54.7%. I mean, Australian Open just gone. It was sort of mid 60s, high 60s. And also in Thailand, the first serve percentage, points won on first serve, was just 58.3. It's really, really slow. And to give you some idea of that, in the final last year, Linz beating Lesia Sarenko, there were just 6 holds of serve in 20 games. I mean, it's, and I watched some of the qualifiers yesterday. It's really slow. It's really hard to hit winners, and it's hard to make your first serve count. It's just very, very slow. I mean, the Australian Open, I shared you and Sean were talking about the Australian Open and how they need to speed the courts up, and I totally agree. Just in terms of just almost like in terms of match duration, 4-hour, 5-hour matches, because the courts are so slow. Those courts are like lightning compared to these ones they're going to encounter in Thailand this week.
Let's have a look at the draw. And it's like I say, the number 1 seed is Magdalene. So that shows you the caliber of the player in this draw here. She in the top half of the draw, we have Magdalene. She's seeded to play Wang in the quarterfinals. Then we have another Wang, which is Jinhu Wang. She should play Putnaseva. So that's the top 4 in the top half of the draw. In the bottom half, we've got Shmedlova, and we have Tatiana Maria. We have Yuan, and we have Linju, the defending champion. So when you look at the draw here, there are some dangerous floaters in the draw. Paula Badosa is in the top half of the draw, and she's actually the tournament favourite as well. We have Tomljanovic in the top half of the draw as well, who's a danger. She's a wild card, the Australian, who's recovering from injury. In the bottom half of the draw, I would probably have to say that it's probably easiest. You have Claire Lai, and Linda Favertova as well, who are decent players as well in that bottom half of the draw. But I think the top half is probably a little bit tougher than the bottom half of the draw. Would you agree on that?
I would, yeah. I mean, the main attraction is Paula Badosa. She made the 3rd round in Melbourne before going out to Amanda Anisimova, another player on the comeback trail. And Badosa, it looks a lot like last year when Bianca Andreescu went to Thailand seeking a confidence-boosting titles, but she didn't get it. She went out in the semi-finals to Lesia Sarenko. My tip last year, Tatiana Maria also went out to Sarenko. The Ukrainian's not there this time, and she was actually double bageled by Sabalenka in Melbourne. The top half does look trickier. I mean, we've got 3 Wangs next to each other in the draw, including Qiang Wang, who was world number 12 at one point, and she's making her return to the tour after burnout and various injuries. But Badosa's got a very, very easy opener against home player Lanlana Tararudi. And then she faces either Lynette or Deanna Schneider in round 2. In the quarterfinals, she'll probably get Jiyu Wang, who's the left-hander, and then possibly Jinyu Wang, who's the right-hander, or Yulia Putintseva in the semis. I mean, it does look a bit of a minefield in the conditions. They really do place a high premium on patience and stamina. In the bottom half, Linz the second seed. Hua Yuan had a good run at Hobart, but she lost in Melbourne in round 1 to Katie Bolter. Tatiana Maria's in there too. You mentioned Linda Frivertova. Yafan Wang's in there as well, and she's very interesting. She took Qin Wensheng to a third set tiebreak, the 10-point tiebreak in Melbourne. She made the top 50 in 2019, and then her career hit the buffers, obviously China having very strict COVID protocols. She only made her proper comeback last year, and she beat Caroline Garcia in the US Open, and that put her back in the top 100. Before that, she won the Stanford Challenger event after coming through the qualifiers. And in Melbourne just gone, she knocked out Sorana Cîrstea and Emma Raducanu. Now, these conditions don't really suit anyone because they're so slow, apart from perhaps Putintseva. I don't think Yafan Wang will mind them as much as some of the others. She's not an especially big hitter, and she doesn't rely too much on her serve. It won't be easy for her, as Anna Karolina Schmidlova potentially awaits in round 2. She had a good run at Roland Garros last year. Tatiana Maria in the quarterfinals, perhaps. But the bottom half does look to be easier. And, you know, the top half, I mean, you've got so many dangers in there for Badosa. She is the tournament favourite, but Lynette potentially in round 2, a couple of the Wangs, Putintseva. I think the bottom half is easier.
Let's have a look at some of the outright odds. And I think the moral of the story here is watch your Wangs. Lots of four Wangs all over the place. So be very careful, because you have to head to the bet rooms, make sure you're betting the right Wang.
The right one, yes.
Yeah. You don't want to be betting the wrong Wang. Wrong Wang, she's playing in it. Wrong Wang, she's one of the qualifiers. Anyway, let's have a look at the outright market. Paula Badosa is the favourite. She's not even seeded. She's plus 450 to win this tournament. Ling Zhu, the defending champion, is $8. Magdalene, the number 1 seed, is $8. Then we have the Wang. Xinhu Wang is 9-1. Zhu Hai Wang is 9-1. Victoria Kolovic is 12-1. Putintseva is 12-1. Tolanovic is 14. Schneider, as that starts off with a tough match against the number 1 seed Lynette. She's 16-1. Yan is 16-1, and then we have Tatiana Maria at 20. And further down the list, we have Yafan Wang at 25-1. So really do, I mean, honestly, I was joking aside there is 4 different Wangs here, and you're going to make sure you because I confused myself really some of the players with the same names, and obviously the pronunciation, Jinhu and Zhu Wang, you sometimes get a little bit confused on the players. So make sure you're betting the right one. Especially, it's even more confusing because Jinhu Wang, so X Wang, is 9-1, and Zhu Hai Wang is also 9-1.
9-1.
So it makes it very, very hard when you're betting those players. So make sure you bet the right one. If you like that player at all. So, Rory, we've gone through the draw. We're saying the value is in the bottom of it's easier. The path through and the bracket in the bottom half is much easier than the top half draw. Nobody can disagree with that. So where do we look at the value? I mean, this to me looks a minefield. I mean, motivation for players who come back from the Australian Open is questionable. They've come to a tournament where there's not much money. They're going to save themselves. So do we go with someone high up on the list and think they're going to show their class, or do we go with someone a lot further down in the odds and someone who can produce a bit of a big price shock here?
Well, as you know, we've said the bottom half is potentially easier, and that's kind of reflected in the betting. It makes you even more likely to go for someone in the bottom half, because looking at the betting, 8 of the top 10 in the betting are in the top half. So, you've got to go for the bottom, really. And as I say, Yafan Wang, I think, has a really good chance here. She's $25, which is a good big price. She's in form. Took Qin Wensheng, I'll get her name right, all the way in Melbourne. I think it was 10-8 in the end. Zheng won their 3rd round encounter. She's playing well. And as I say, she's not as serve dependent. She's not as big a hitter as some of the others. So the slowness of the court won't affect her as much. If I had to back someone in the top half, it would be Putintseva, because she does go very well in slow conditions. But the usual caveats with her apply. She can be a bit temperamental, to say the least. So I'm just going to stick to one here. I think Yafan Wang is great value at $25 for an each-way bet.
25 to 1, Yafan Wang. Remember, the tournament starts at 2 a.m. Tomorrow morning. Head to the BetRivers website to make sure you get your bets down. And just do it, like I said, joking aside, check the Wangs. 25 to 1, Yafan Wang is our pick here. I actually like the defending champion here. I think Lin Zhu's got a great chance to go deep in the tournament. She's in that bottom half. The draw to number 2. She's 8 to 1. Hopefully, we have a match up in the semi-finals and we can get both. But I think Lin Zhu at 8 is a good bet here. If you look at the previous winners here, though, Rory, there hasn't been many shocks really when you look at them. I mean, the caliber of the tournament hasn't been great. Lin Zhu won it last year. Lynette as a winner. Astramenska, as we've mentioned before. Babos and Svitolina. So apart from Babos, it's a tournament that people towards the top end of the market do well on it, which is quite a surprise a week after a major, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can see why someone like Svitolina would go well, because she's such a great mover and gets most things back. And you certainly need that here. And you need some patience because you're just not going to hit many winners. It's so slow. So, yeah, Lin Zhu is a good shout. I mean, I think when you've got conditions like this, certainly someone who's been and done it is going to have a big advantage over someone who hasn't. So out of the market leaders, I think Lin Zhu is the safest proposition at $8. I think that's sound enough.
In that bottom half of the draw, I just think he looks like I know it's like an obvious play, isn't it? It's just probably a little bit too obvious. But she didn't do very well at the Australian Open. She got beaten the first round. Prior to that, she got to the quarterfinals of Hobart. But Yafan Wang, and what the evidence of what we saw in Melbourne, she's in form. Just on that point, we're going to come on to another tournament in a minute. It's very hard to break down that tournament. We'll explain why in a minute. But how do you cap or handicap or think about these players who've come back from the Australian Open? We're going to talk about some players who've gone deep in the tournament, but anybody who's travelled back, has it taken them a few weeks to get involved? We want someone who's probably got not been eliminated in qualification, who didn't really participate in Australia. It's a difficult one to assess where we sort of put our trust after Melbourne, isn't it, with the players?
It is, and for two reasons. One is obviously the potential fatigue aspect. So when we look at Linz, that we'll have a few players who have gone deep, not just in singles, in doubles as well, and who have literally finished the tournament, got on the flight, and they're into another tournament. That's not ideal preparation. No. Not so much for this tournament. I mean, Badosa got to round 3. I don't think anyone in the field got any further than that, to be honest.
I think it's more, but it's more for Linz, isn't it? It's more for that. But it's just after, you it's such a quick turnaround. I just think to myself, do you oppose the players who are in action? More so for match bets, really.
Yeah, you can do. I think as well, conditions will come into effect. More so with Thailand because they're so slow. I mean, Linz it's an indoor tournament, but it's not as quick as it should be. We'll get onto that in a bit. So it won't be dissimilar to Melbourne, but there is that travel, there is fatigue, and there is that element of, wow, had a slam, done really well at a slam. Oh, it's back to the grind. Yeah, I'd be inclined to take on players that had gone deep in a slam the following week.
Yeah, I think the reason why we're talking about that is more for Linz, which we're going to talk about now. Now, this is very difficult for us because the draw has only just been announced. So the draw's been announced in the last couple of hours. There isn't any odds available with Rivers, but they will be available on the website this evening. And we can't, there's qualification going on now, so we don't know some of the qualifiers in the draw. Some of the qualifiers are big names, so it's quite important to see where they're placed in the segment of the draw. So unfortunately, we won't be able to give a prediction. We make some leans or people, we won't have any prices, but overnight and during the evening, Bet Rivers will have the odds available on this. And obviously, if you bet with Bet Rivers, you can bet live and watch live. You better live stream these matches from your home on your tablet or on your mobile phone device, whichever device you want. So that's a bit of a benefit to have a bet. All these matches will be live streamed if you place a bet on the Bet Rivers website. But this is difficult, very, very difficult for the reasons we mentioned there. Now, not only that, is that it's a 22.5-hour or 23-hour flight from Melbourne to Vienna. Then when you get to Vienna, you've got to then drive to Linz, which is another 2.5 hours. So people who have traveled from Melbourne to here, it'll be a 25, 26 hour. When you get the bags as well, waiting around, you're talking like 28-hour journeys here. Now, the main reason I mention this is because you got Yastramenska, who reached the semi-finals at the Australian Open. She's in action. She's up in action against the qualifier. Now, for me, already, whoever she's got, that is an auto fade. The qualifier's played already. She's played a couple of matches. She knows the court. She knows the conditions. Yastremska is going to come. She's going to be absolutely exhausted. She's just played the tournament of her life. She's had all the media attention, and now she's thrown in against a qualifier in the other side of the world. So that's my first automatic auto fade. You in agreement with me on that one?
I'll see who it is first.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I definitely reason they actually put on the Linz on their Twitter site, sorry, X site. Yastremska arriving today, greeted with some flowers and
Bags in her eyes.
She's not the only one. Yastremska obviously reached the semis. Yelena Ostapenko reached the final of the women's doubles.
Yep.
And Elise Mertens won the final women's doubles. They're all there in action. So it's a
Paolini
really
went deep
turnaround
as well, didn't she? Paolini went quite deep as well. There's a lot of question marks on these players.
There certainly are. And Ostapenko's the top seed. Katerina Alexandrova is 2, Donna Vekic 3, Mertens 4, Anastasia Potapova, the reigning champion, 5. I mean, she didn't go deep in Melbourne, so that could be a plus this week. Paolini 6, Varvara Gracheva 7, and Petra Martic is 8. The top 4 do receive buys into round 2, though, so that helps Ostapenko and Mertens. But as you say, for Yastremska, who's not even seeded, she could have a tough first round match.
100%. She's a fade. I don't care who she's playing. I'm taking her on some capacity, the handicap or whatever. I mean, it would be a miraculous event if she goes deep in this tournament. I think she'd rest herself up and save herself for bigger and better things after what was being an epic week. Let's have a look at this tournament here. Let's have the previous winners. Potapova, as you said, won it last year. The Russian, she's in action here. We have Alison Risk, who won it in 2021. Sabalenka and Goff, previous winners here. So some big names here. It's a 500 event. So there's some good players in the field. We don't have any odds, as we say, but in the top half of the draw, Ostapenka, Mertens is in the top half of the draw, Paolini in the top half of the draw, Gracheva is in the top half of the draw. In the bottom half, Martic, Yastremska, as we mentioned there, Vekic, Potapova, Alexandrova. So looking at the bits on the draw, I don't think there's really much of an advantage between the top half and the bottom half. I don't know about yourself, Rory, but before we break down the draw, what are the conditions like here?
Yeah, so I mentioned this is an indoor hard court tournament, but it played pretty slowly for indoors last year. There wasn't that much pace. Statistically, it was a medium pace. The two metrics I look at, I mentioned earlier, service hold percentage and first serve won. Service hold percentage was 68.1, which would suggest a little faster than medium pace. That's, to give you some idea, that's slightly quicker than Melbourne was, slightly higher than Melbourne was for that percentage. But the first serve one was only 62.2%, which takes it down to more like a slow medium court, similar to, say, WTA finals in Cancun, for those who saw that, which wasn't very quick at all. So even though it's indoors, and one you'd think it being indoors would be good for the servers, it didn't really play out that way last season. I mentioned Potapova, obviously defending her title. 12 months ago, she beat Vondrousova in the semis and Petra Martic in the final. I think, with two absentees of Vondrousova and Svitolina, both who were injured in Melbourne, they've both pulled out of this tournament. It's an interesting tournament because, as you say, the qualifiers are still going on. The final qualifiers are actually tomorrow on Monday, and we don't know where they'll be placed in the draw, so it makes things very tricky. For instance, I'd be very, very interested to see where Clara Towson.
That's who I want to see. I mean, you know, I'm a big fan of Clara Towson, and I thought she was destined for massive things.
Nearly beat Azarenka in Melbourne. She drew level in that and had her chances. But she has a good record indoors. She's had so many injuries. She's one of these players who, because she doesn't come from a particularly wealthy background, really struggles on the tour. She's had trouble with, funding of travel and coaches and everything else. But there's no doubt she's a very, very fine player. And she's in the top 100. And yeah, she does well indoors. Alicia Parks is playing right now. She's 1 set all in her qualifier semi-final against Luisa Stefanini. Although, she obviously won this time last year. She won the tournament in Lyon, which was another indoor hard court tournament. But that was a bit quicker than the conditions she'll encounter here. It's a very, very tricky one. No odds, as you've said. I think one player who could go well, she's in the top half of the draw, is Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. She's probably in the easiest part of the draw. I think the bottom half looks a bit tougher. You've got Yastremska, you've got Anna Blinkova, who knocked out Lena Rybakina in Melbourne, Potapova, Alexandrova, Clara Burrell, who beat Jessica Pegula in the Australian Open. So without knowing where the qualifiers go, the bottom half does look a little bit tougher. Obviously, we need to wait for the odds to come out and everything like that. But the one who attracts my interest, and she might be a price, is Pavlyuchenkova, because she just seems to be getting back to the sort of form, maybe not the form that took her to a French Open final, but certainly the sort of form where she could be competitive.
And I've got her making through to the semi-finals on my little workout here, Pavlyuchenkova. Obviously, it's so difficult, so we don't know where the qualifier is going to go, as Rory said there. So check that out. The BetRivers website will have an outright market after qualifying today. You'll have it for the early hours of tomorrow. But I think Clara Towson is definitely one to keep an eye on. I've mentioned her many times on the show. I was really confident that she would break into like the top 10. I thought she could be a potential world number one when I first saw this girl. It hasn't happened, lots of injuries, but she is coming back to some form. And if I want her to get drawn against Yastremska. In that
she'll probably go off favourite for that.
Well, listen, I hope the market goes crazy for Yastremska, but that's where I want her to be drawn. So I'm eagerly waiting to see where it is. So unfortunately, no picks from Austria in Linz, but I think the rule is really to fade a lot of players who've gone deep in the singles and the doubles at Melbourne. Like I say, 23-hour flight, 2.5-hour drive to Linz from Vienna. And then some of them might even have connecting flights as well. They could be traveling for like 48 hours. I mean, it's just insane and playing this tournament. So I think that's going to be a very, very big factor. And players who just come through qualifying and, got used to conditions, I think will have a big advantage here. So just the one pick, and it's in Thailand Open. We'll go for Yafan Wang. And as I said, she's 25 to 1. Just remember those Wangs. You might look at the list and see the first Wang and think that's the one. You don't want to be betting the wrong Wang. 25 to 1, Yafan Wang. She's in the bottom half of the draw. She's Rory's pick each way in the Thailand Open, and the tournament starts at 2 a.m. Eastern time on Monday morning. So you better watch the NFL, big matches tonight, conference matches, and then you'll be able to have a little wager on the Yafan Wang, hopefully with some of your profits on the big matches in the NFL. Rory, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on. Just remember that you can follow us on our socials at becausewewin on Twitter and Instagram. Lots of new followers on Twitter over the last few weeks during the Australian Open. So thank you very much. If you haven't followed, just give us a little follow there. It's very important. And you can subscribe to the Betting Weekly Studios on YouTube. You're probably watching this on YouTube. There's a little button. Just click that subscribe button. They'll give you an alert every single time anything drops. And I've just done the rota for February. You lucky people. There's lots of really good stuff going on. There's Premier League. We've got the Champions League soccer back. Some huge tennis tournaments coming up as well. Tournaments in Dubai, Qatar, some big events as well. So lots of action there, and you'll get notified every time anything drops. And you can also download our podcast on your preferred podcast provider, which is Betting Weekly WTA. It's a standalone one this year. Myself and Roy will be doing every week. We give you the outright odds and the best picks on the outright markets when we get the draws, and we've got the time of the draws. So thanks again, Rory. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone, for watching. It's a bit of a come down from the Australian, but it doesn't matter where you get the winner, as long as we get the winner. Doesn't matter if it's Australian Open, US Open, Latvian Open, the Wang Master event. We'll give you winners here. No, it doesn't matter where it is. Have a good day. Take care of yourself, and we'll speak to you all very soon.